we got to create something that is enjoyable for everybody. And he feels that we can get there with AI and robotics. And then, of course, he starts talking about the bot. And then he says, hey, by the way, we're going to bring these things out among you. And everybody went nuts. They're like, wow, we're going to get to see one singular bot come out in the crowd. That's going to be wild. That's not what happened. I mean, the curtains went up and it was just like Star Wars, just a row of stormtroopers start marching out into the crowd. And I was like freaking out, like just like everybody else, because it was surreal.
Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What? Another day?
Another episode, eh?
Thank you. All right. Well, today is a continuation of kind of the last two episodes that we've had. 2 weeks ago, we did the description on what we thought the Robotaxi reveal would be, and
What
then
we
last week
imagined.
imagined, and then last week we did the discussion of kind of our take on it. But this week we have the unique privilege of actually bringing somebody on that was at the event, and as we alluded to last week. Jesse had sent a video to the group. It's like, hey, check out this person that was in the van. And Chris was like, yeah, I know that guy. So here we are. Welcome to the podcast, Josh.
Hey guys, I'm glad to be here. Great to see y'all and be on with another Josh. I'm Josh West 24/7. And yeah, the show was incredible.
I'm Josh Turner 24/7. No,
Yes, sir.
no.
And I'll point out that he wasn't just at the show. It's not on your YouTube. I'm wondering if that's because of copyright, but on X, you posted last week a video and you were actually in the VIP with Kimball Musk and May Musk and all kinds of other fanciness, right? So you weren't just there, you were there. Like how did that come
Yeah.
about? And was it a copyright thing that you didn't put onto the YouTube, only on X?
Well, in my YouTube video, there is a shot of me speaking with Tosca, and May is kind of next to her, but definitely wanted to be respectful of the Musk family. And, they're a little more comfortable with kind of still photos and that sort of thing rather than being on camera and that sort of thing. Sometimes things can get twisted. We're living in this world of AI and, people will feed words coming out of the speakers that don't exist. So definitely just trying to be a little bit of respect there. The family is phenomenal. Kimball is a super high energy guy. Tosca, which is Elon and Kimball's sister, she is an absolute sweetheart, and she never met me before. She didn't know who I was, but took the time to chat with me. She was really excited about the event, and what's wild is that her mom May actually seemed to recognize me. She's like, "You're the blonde guy from Toronto," and I'm like, "Yes, I am." She's been great. She's interacted with quite a bit of my stuff on Instagram and X, and so that was very very cool. So
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
and for
yeah,
those like her that maybe haven't come across your content and kind of who you are and where you got started. I mean, I know your background is in automotive and automotive sales, internet sales, and that kind of thing, and that's kind of where you made your mark. Kind of walk the audience through like that. Who you are, where you came from. You're one of my favorite Canadians. There's like yourself, and there's Dominic Ione, who's from up in Canada. There's of course Michael J. Fox, and is it Keanu Reeves, who's also Canadian?
I think so. There's a few of us around. Justin Bieber's Canadian. There's a whole
Yeah,
bunch of
He
well-known names.
doesn't count.
Drake, of course, is Canadian as well. So
yeah. So I kind of want to
um,
talk about that. How'd you get started, and then how'd you find
yeah,
yourself to the U.S. And then I noticed your car still has Ontario plates. Uh,
yeah.
so tell us all about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I am from about an hour and change north of Toronto, Ontario, which is kind of in the middle of Canada. And yeah, so my last, I don't know, just couple decades have been in automotive and started there when I was a kid, actually in high school. Just, moving cars as a lot guy. I did some school co-ops and always loved automotive. So that's kind of what I ended up in. I did a short stint in heavy equipment, selling tractors and construction equipment. That was a couple of years, and then went into automotive sales.
Jesse all of a sudden got a random geeky face on,
Found, yeah, kind of found my niche. Ended up becoming the top automotive sales guy for any legacy OEM in Canada for several years running in the early 2010s, and yeah, so that went, huge amount of success there. So that was awesome, and then ended up moving into dealership management, opened up a used electric vehicle department, and ran that for a few years, and yeah, just kind of got in touch with electric cars, I guess, very early on in 2017, I guess, would be the first true taste. My first ride in an electric car was actually in 2011. Had a customer come into the dealership, pulled up in an original Tesla Roadster, and I was able to convince him to take me for a ride. So that was super exciting. Never forgot that moment. And then, yeah, just kind of the rollout of the Model 3 and realizing that with direct sales, that would heavily impact the dealership world, and just how things are kind of moving along, and kind of yeah, went down the rabbit hole, and ended up with a Model S Plaid. I saw this thing come out. I'm like, holy smokes, you can buy a car with 1,000 horsepower for less than $1 million. Like that's unheard of.
Yeah.
Was that your
And
first? Was that your first one?
no, so we have a 2016 Model X, one of the early P100Ds. It's got the little power spoiler on the back, and we bought that one secondhand. And my wife drives that with the kids, and she actually owns a business where she hauls furniture quite often. So we tow with that vehicle all the time. So a lot of EV towing experience, which has been great actually, to be able to educate and just kind of share experiences with the public. So huge automotive background, both in traditional combustion engines as well as electric. And yeah, started out on my YouTube career kind of initially really pushed by Corey Steuben, originally of Monroe, with Sandy
Yeah.
Monroe. He's since moved on to Lucid, but yeah, he was actually quite instrumental in pushing me to get into the YouTube world. So that's kind of the origin story there. And yeah, ended up doing a whole series of videos on kind of what happens behind closed doors with dealerships, and how the actual business works, and how it's affected by our shift into direct sales with the advent of technology, the internet, artificial intelligence, and just-in-time ordering, and all that sort of thing. So that was interesting. And then I ended up, my wife is both Canadian and American. We decided to move to the US. We had a bit of a hiccup. We ended up at the border, all loaded up with two vehicles. And I ended up getting turned back because there was some confusion with my immigration paperwork. And we ended up being separated for about a year. And they continued on to the US. Our kids were enrolled in school, and so we didn't want to mess any of that up. And so we lived separately for about a year. It was very difficult, but I tried to make the best of it. Ended up taking my Model S Plaid all the way across Canada, the second largest country in the world, tip to tip, went to the furthest point east in the entirety of North America, Cape Spear, Newfoundland, and car camped in the vehicle the whole way. So that cataloged all of that on YouTube, and then it just kind of, yeah, kind of snowballed from there. It's been a wild ride.
Shows what happened when us men lose our women. We just roam the earth like Kane from Kung Fu, man.
There you
It was
go.
like,
Yeah.
I got a year without my wife. What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get in my
Yeah.
Tesla. I'm just gonna drive, man. Like Forrest Gump. You just kept
Yeah.
driving. It's just it's
Become a
great.
barbarian.
That is
And
awesome.
it's not even like, he was sitting there like hitting up hotels along the way. He slept in his car. I
Right.
mean, like, he
That
pulled
is
the bearded Tesla road trip, but he did it with a Model X. What
Model S.
Model S Plaid. So it's the first 1,000 horsepower car to ever cross Canada. So that was kind of cool. I got a bit of a shout out from Elon and some of the Tesla leadership. That was cool.
That is awesome, man. And shout out to Corey, because Corey's great. He's right here in the Bay Area where I am,
Uh,
at Lucid, and he was somebody that when the Tesla adapters came out for Ford, we had a big day with the Lightning Club and the Mach E Club. And Corey, we went to the Tesla Supercharger right around the corner from Lucid. It's a really large charger. It has some of the best rates. And Corey was really generous, along with Debbie Dahl from Lucid's owners group. They came out and joined us for that. And Corey is great, man. Like, what a great individual. I give him a hard time because he still has not gotten me into the gravity. So I will continue to harass him at every opportunity. But yeah, I love small worlds, man. I love hearing that he is part of the catalyst for you. That's fantastic. How did you guys click and get together? How did he make that
yeah.
suggestion? Just because you
Yeah.
were in the
So
industry, or?
yeah, so well, I've been following Monroe and these guys for quite a while. I remember specifically kind of being at the dealership. I remember the day that Sandy followed me back early before they had a whole staff running their socials and that sort of thing. And he says, He's like, I'm following you because you're Canadian and you're in automotive. So that was pretty cool. And actually, since then, Sandy and I have done several interviews, and we're really kind of kindred spirits. He's got a similar background to me. He's also a Canadian expat, and
That's right.
from the same province as me. And his history is in legacy automotive on the manufacturing side, and mine, of course, is on the retail side. So we get along really well. But they did a big road trip with the Model S Plaid when it first came out before they tore it down. They went all around the United States and Canada, and they came up to the Toronto area. So I drove out to meet them and spent a couple hours with them. And yeah, we really hit it off. Again, that background in traditional automotive, we knew a lot of the same guys higher up at Stellantis and some of the leadership on the manufacturing side too. So a lot of common faces.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
I think you're the second Canadian we've ever had on the podcast.
Oh,
The first group I think we did the nerdish nerd news, which is a podcast that is up I think out of Saskatchewan or something.
okay.
But then
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean the
Good
we
boys out there.
yeah, we Jesse and I actually went up to Toronto late last year for a business meeting, and Jesse, because he had lost his passport had expired, we you can't fly in with a birth certificate, but you can drive in with a birth
Yeah.
certificate. So we had to fly into Buffalo, and then we rented a Tesla and drove it all the way up to Toronto and back. So it was kind of a fun little road trip to take up through Niagara and go up into Toronto. But Toronto's a beautiful city.
Everything
Um,
is so clean. You hear that, but everything was just extremely clean. So
Yeah, the
loved
that
it.
was
two
actually my first experience driving a Tesla. I had driven a bunch of random other EVs, but I'd never gotten in an actual Tesla myself, and so that was the first time I got to drive a Tesla and try to figure out all the buttons and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
trying to imagine 6'4" Josh finding his way into a Tesla. Was it at least a Y or
No,
you
it
got
No.
into
was
a three?
yeah, it was a three. It was like the cheapest Hertz rental that they had, and that was what we got, and
The glass roof
got to use the
helps.
Tesla supercharger in Toronto, and it was interesting. But hey, got us there and back, and we were on the EV journey, and so why not rent an EV? Now I'm sure Hertz doesn't own that vehicle anymore, but
It's
uh,
sold somewhere for 19,000 on a website.
somewhere, yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd have
Um,
got one of those when they came up, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, those
Hey,
are ideal.
so yeah, so speaking of Sandy, Sandy was also someone that you had on your video, and it looked like it was quite a crowd. I mean, Marquise was there, and of course we had Tesla Tino and Bearded Tesla, and I think I know Al from the Tesla Owners Club East Bay was out there. Just a whole lot of cool people. None of us were invited. I did get a really annoying, funny email where it looked exactly like the invite, but it was an
Yeah.
invite to the Fremont factory for a watch party. And yeah, I was a little bitter. I was like, oh, that was worse, man. That was like, like I got friend zoned. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the girl you've been hoping would talk to you finally does, and it's
Yeah.
hey, can you show up to this thing and meet my friend or something, right? And you're like, oh man. But how
Yeah.
was it? Tell us about how it actually was, because we've talked about our impressions. The energy from your video seems amazing. Like, what was your impressions? Because there was a lot there to be excited about, and there's a lot there that really seems further away and more aspirational. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So of course, as with any event, there's a lot of anticipation. People were guessing and projecting and all of that sort of thing, predicting. We're talking, hoping for roadster unveil, production ready roadsters, hoping for, the Model 2 and maybe a traditional van, cargo van or what have you. But obviously none of that came to fruition. But as with any Tesla event, there's a huge amount of energy. Everybody's just buzzing, and a lot of people, like you said, these all these cool dudes and dudettes hanging out, and yeah, the energy level was just to the moon. A lot of security to get through, which I was actually very, very happy to see. Multiple levels of security, metal detectors. They had sniffer dogs, chemical detection, all that sort of thing. Just considering the climate we're in, that is understandable, and I think everybody there
Elon
was okay with it.
is promoting one thing, but some of what he's backing is another. So I think he specifically needs a little bit more extra
Well,
coverage and security.
yeah, definitely is a target, but you got to remember that anybody being there, regardless of their personal views or whatever, they're in his vicinity. They also become somewhat of a target. So it's security is of the utmost importance in my opinion. So that was really good to see. So we got through that and got into the event, and man, they nailed it. Like I've been to a few events, and I would say the best one up to that point was the Cyber Rodeo here in Austin. At the Gigafactory when they opened it, that was a phenomenal event. And this, I would say, is right up there with it. I mean, the food spread was unbelievable. The desserts, like amazing. Even they had the Tesla brand, branding the burgers, with the Tesla logo on the bun, which is cool. Full DJ, drinks are flowing, everything's happening, and you're seeing the who's who, right? So they've got, man, the author of Elon's book there. Sir Walter Isaacson was there, CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, like just huge names, guys from all over the world. I spoke with the CEO of a huge microprocessor company out of Taiwan, spoke with John Stokes of Idra. They create and build all of the gigapresses for Tesla and other companies. So there was guys from everywhere. Elon's personal friend group, family, and then of course all the fans that were excited to see kind of what was coming out. Elon gets up on stage and starts talking about this world where there's a future that you want to avoid and a future that you want to be a part of, and it's up to us to create the future that we want to be a part of. He says, you look at Blade Runner, right? He's like, well, and he puts up this image on the screen, and he's like, this actually looks pretty bleak. He's like, the only thing you'd really want out of this photo is maybe this guy's duster jacket is pretty cool, but other than that, we'll pass on the rest, right? So we got to create something that is enjoyable for everybody, and he feels that we can get there with AI and robotics. And then, of course, he starts talking about the bot, and then he says, "Hey, by the way, we're going to bring these things out among you." And everybody went nuts. They're like, wow, we're going to get to see one singular bot come out in the crowd. That's going to be wild. That's not what happened. I mean, the curtains went up and it was just like Star Wars, just a row of stormtroopers start marching out into the crowd. And I was like freaking out, like just like everybody else, because it was surreal. You felt like you're in a movie. Okay, you're on a movie set. It's held at the Warner Brothers studio. But man, it was wild because you're like, there's robots everywhere. And people are talking to them and they're dancing, playing charades, playing rock, paper, scissors, telling jokes. Like it was wild. Yeah, it's
Now,
truly surreal.
I was most excited about Optimus. I was literally ready to put money down. We talked last week about if you factor in the idea of the robot can do your yard work and can do your housekeeping, you can do your laundry, maybe your dishes, just basic stuff. And if you think about what somebody might pay for those already and factor that into a 5-year car payment type situation, now I know they're not going to, unveil at 30 grand, which I think was his target, but probably got to be at 100,000 to start and kind of whittle its way down. But looking at it, there's been a lot of controversy about that because I was super impressed with the articulation, the range of motion, just the ability for it to maneuver. But then do you think it clouded it at all? And do you think it's accurate that it was obvious? I think it's obvious, but again, you were there, that all the voices were a human and that all of the articulation was controlled by a human. There was very little AI aside from the existence of it standing upright and maybe moving a bit, and that all the dancing was kind of a pre-programmed script, which again, I think doesn't take away from the articulation amazingness of its platform. But is that an accurate sense, what we've kind of seemed to have taken away from it? And with that said, do you think maybe it was a mistake? Does that cloud it instead of just being transparent about where it's at?
So you have to approach the event with the right mindset and understanding that this event was not a traditional Tesla event. Pretty much every other event has been a sales pitch. It doesn't matter if it's Cybertruck unveil, it's whatever. It's like, hey, we're gonna, here's our new whatever doohickey, and now it's time to put your money down. Starts at 30 grand, $100 refundable deposit. Let's go. That's not what happened here. What happened here was Tesla created a vision of the world that they're working towards creating. This was an event circled around education and showing people what we're working towards, what Tesla is looking to create. They're not ready to sell the bots right now. They're not ready to sell Robotaxi or Robovan or any of these other things. It's about educating not only everyday people, just normal people. But I mean, they had politicians there, they had influencers, they had Hollywood actors, they had titans of industry, they had leadership from around the world to witness this event, to come into this world that they created to get educated on what could be. And so when you come at it from that standpoint, you're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, they had some guys running some of the movements and the talking, but yeah, those bots were standing and walking all on their own. There was no tethering. There was no, marionette strings or anything like that. So that in and of itself was incredible. Boston Dynamics has never done anything like that. Let's see them put, half a dozen or 20, 30 of their robots out in a crowd of 1,500 people who are partying and maybe had a couple of beverages. Like, they would never take that risk. So it's incredible that Tesla did that. I mean, they got a set on them. Like, I couldn't believe like the risk they're taking here. And also too, I'll just add that, for somebody that it's their first experience with a robot out in a crowd, untethered. I mean, this thing could swing its arm and do whatever. It's kind of comforting to know that there was some human input too, to say, hey, this is a fail safe. It's built in. We've got guys in the back, and they're in control here. So there's nothing to fear. So that's, two positives as far as the way I see it, that this was an event circled around education. Same goes for the robotaxis and the Robovan. It was teaching the world of what we're working towards.
Note the Robovan, Josh. Robovan. We talked about that last week. Is you?
Yeah,
Robovan, and
well, Robovan sounds like either like a prescription or like a cheap cologne. A couple of spritzes of Robovan, and you'll be at the club.
Yeah. I think the other really cool thing, kudos to you for talking about the Robovan, was you were there with Franz, and I'll let you say his last name, because for the life of me, there's no way. I don't know if that's just that Canadian gift. You're international that way, but his last name, you nailed it. First, say his last name properly. And I love that you got a little hint out of him about the octo valve, and talk about what you noticed there, because I thought that was really insightful, how many things were shared cross platform. So start with the proper pronunciation of his name.
Yeah, so his name
is Franz. Did you practice
that? No, I don't know. Just flows. But I got a ton of respects for Franz. He's definitely an icon in the automotive, just in design industry overall. But yeah, Franz von Holzhausen is his name.
Yeah,
Holzhausen.
Man,
yeah.
It's an awesome name. It sounds like an engineering name.
Yeah, definitely a boss name.
How did you just happen to be in the Robovan with him, or was that strategic? And how did you? What was your impressions of it?
Well, I ended up with a VIP ticket. Thank you to the anonymous person who helped with that. That was a huge surprise for me. And if you had the orange ticket, then you were able to go into the Robovan. So I was, doing my filming, and just created a kind of a little bit of a scene where I'm kind of showing around. Oh, look, this is the back seats, and this is so futuristic, beautiful interior. And this model comes with, 14 feet, and this particular one comes with Franz von Holzhausen. Just pan the camera over, and he's just sitting there relaxing, and it was kind of a cool moment. But I just wanted to pick his brain for a few things. I couldn't put everything on camera, obviously, but the few things that I was able to share was that, actually, the biggest thing that spoke to me was that Franz said that a shocking amount of components that make up the Robovan are already in production. Underneath that skin, like the motors, the air ride, all of that stuff underneath there, Tesla's already producing it. So that thing is far closer to, production ready for market than people realize. So that was quite profound for me. But the fit and finish on the thing was fantastic. The seats are beautiful, very comfy. Of course, Tesla is one of the only automakers that builds their own seats in-house. So that's, understandable. But it was spacious. It was very futuristic. It has kind of like a cyber steampunk Art Deco feel to it, which I love. It's right up my alley. And it was definitely something that I could see either rolling down the street, or maybe there's going to be like an early adopter company similar to the Tesla Semi with Pepsi. I think we'll see company like Disney perhaps buy a dozen of them to test out and perfect. Maybe we'll see something like that.
I'd love to see a billionaire collaboration with him and Mark Zuckerberg, because out here in the Bay Area, In fact, again, right around the corner, kind of between my warehouse with my 9 to 5 and Lucid, there is a big depot filled with electric buses. And they go all over the Bay Area picking up people that go to Facebook. They bring them across the Dumbarton Bridge and then they go back to their depot and recharge. And then in the afternoon, they kind of start the cycle over again. They also have some BYD buses that go back and forth between the different campuses there in Menlo Park, because the campus has the original campus on the right and then a whole nother area on the left that they've expanded to. So they've got these buses, and how cool would it be to see them kind of starting out in that type of way? And he talked about California and Texas being some of the original spots, I'm guessing, for regulation. And kind of to what you said about the whole almost presenting a vision, which makes a lot of sense, because in my work, anytime we're going through a change curve, the first thing we do is get in front of the team and we present the vision. We need to all be kind of go in the same direction and have that. Here's why we're going to work on this, and we know we're going to struggle, but here's the vision. So I love how you took that as that was what was being presented. And does that lean into the idea of these VIPs, of these people that are international? Because one of the hurdles is going to have to be the fear and the uncertainty and the doubt that we know magnified on this level when you're talking about autonomy and robotics and AI. And they're going to need help passing regulations, right? So
Yeah.
do you get a sense that some of that was, hey, I'm going to need allies in this, and if they don't understand the vision, I'm never going to get legislation passed? Like, is that kind of your sense?
100%. And the fact of the matter is that these guys flew, halfway or three-quarters of the way around the world to be there in person, because you truly had to experience it. And that was why, the direction I took with my YouTube video was to try and kind of convey that feeling of being there, being in the crowd with the robots, being in the robotaxi, getting those shots of, not just inside the car, but what it looks like to look in on somebody driving the car, the wheels turning, the signal lights going on, and by themselves with no steering wheel. And, these are just, I think there's a lot of emotion involved too, when you're kind of giving up control, to the machine type of thing. And so I think, to your point of these guys coming from around the world, they had to experience that. And so they can go out back home and to their respective, social circles or political circles or whatever, they can go out and evangelize that what Tesla's doing is not scary, and that it's totally, a brighter future for everybody.
And I think, I mean, if you see what Tesla's done with their full self-driving and the advancements that they have there, that's pretty much the only technology that's holding back these vehicles from being a reality. I mean, producing the actual Robotaxi and Robovan isn't really that. I mean, like you're saying, they're making all the parts, and it wouldn't be a major feat for them to go out and produce that vehicle. But if you're eliminating the steering wheel and you're eliminating the accelerator in that situation, like you are fully reliant on the technology. And what we've seen is, I think that technology is close. That Tesla is one of the most advanced in the world when it comes to that level of autonomy, but that has to be perfect before that can be a widespread reality. And I mean, you can go into the big cities. I've seen Phoenix and some of the other cities that have the automated taxis, that it's a car, but it's run by cameras and computers. And so, I mean, they do exist, but it's going to probably start, like we've said, in a big city where it's really well mapped and really well integrated. The Robotaxi won't take you from San Francisco across to LA or whatever. Like, you're going to have to be in a very well defined area that's very well studied and imprinted into the technology, because like you're saying, I mean, you are releasing control to the technology. And we mentioned it last week. Chris mentioned it. You won't have a propensity to forgive technology if it makes a mistake. And so that's something that, on that side of things, that's what I think is the largest hurdle, because the production of the vehicle isn't the end of the world. And obviously, Optimus with full autonomous, but you're seeing with AI and some of the intellect that's behind some of these systems, it's not that far off from meaningful dialogue.
Yeah.
Reading and understanding on how to do certain tasks is a task, but for the vehicle side of things, the autonomy there, I think we're really close. And I think that rollout will probably happen sooner than later. But that's something that we just have to finish perfecting the full self drive, and getting that side mastered. That way, we can trust the technology and really actually let go of the wheel, if you will, and giving that control to the technology to get you from A to B.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Shook, he's kind of the lead guy at Tesla AI and recently promoted to VP. So that's exciting for him. I was able to meet and speak with him, and he did confirm that all of those robotaxis were driving 100% autonomously. And when I first got in, it was like, oh, okay, this is kind of like a Disney ride. It's just going to go along its predefined track. But then when I got further into the drive, there's like delivery trucks, and then I'm looking around, and there's other vehicles moving around, and there's driving over, in and out of the driveways, over the curb, and that sort of thing, like totally like a normal vehicle would. And so that was very striking to me. And the other thing I noticed was that there was no queue line. Like there's no barriers. There was no guardrails. Nothing. Like anybody could have walked out in front of any of these cars. And so I was like, wow, like these guys are like way more ahead. To your point, like they're far, far more ahead than I think what we are understanding. Because for most people, you've just hopped in a Tesla and maybe you've driven the latest version of FSD. Well, that's what they are allowing us to know. And I think what we got kind of a peek into at the We Robot event was some of the more advanced stuff that they're working on, and it is crazy smooth. Like it is so much smoother than FSD. I think that's what struck me most was being in that cyber cab, the robotaxi, was how smooth it was. Transitioning left, right. Like if it pulled up at the drop off zones and you hop in, you buckle your seatbelt, door closes, and there's a guy, let's say there's a car or a person blocking its way, it'll put its signal light on and drive out around it. Like not predetermined, it's just like, hey, there's nothing around me. Let me just go around and get going on the ride, which I thought was wild. Like I hadn't experienced that before. It didn't have the jitteriness of the FSD or even the smart summon or actual smart summon, whatever they call it.
The
And
ass.
then the ass, yeah. And you don't have the steering wheel that you normally are seeing, spinning around as it's trying to do its self drive because it's just not there. So I think
Which
that added to the idea of the smoothness.
I think that's even better actually, because I sometimes it's distracting when I see videos of people with the full self driving and that steering wheel. I think it adds to the image of jitteriness because it
Yeah,
is. I think if you didn't see that steering wheel, it would almost subconsciously not look as jittery as it does.
I
And I
agree.
think that the technology, like you're saying, is already there, but even if it's 99.9% accurate, that 0.1% is not enough to make it available to the public. It has to be 99.9999999% accurate,
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
the chase of
if
nines.
0.1% of the time it makes a bad decision, Tesla goes bankrupt on lawsuits. And so, the technology is probably already in their systems and it's 99.9% accurate, but they're working on understanding the reality of human error and how to understand and comprehend that specific piece of it. Because if you went and changed every vehicle on the road to autonomous, it'd be a much safer roadway because the vehicles can communicate with each other. I mean, there's this whole aspect of, there's a lot of safety because it's a reliable and understandably guaranteed situation. But when you
Yeah,
deal with other people and human error, that's what you have the computer has to know how to respond to human error. And that's what is so unpredictable. And so that's where the 99.9 is not enough. And so you have to have really, really sophisticated AI technology that's able to comprehend what's happening in real time and make educated decisions that protect the human error side of things, which is just something that's far above and beyond what any normal AI system would be demanded to do. So I do think the technology's there, and like you said with the robotaxi, it was driving by itself, and I'm sure it can.
yeah,
But that 99% accuracy is not enough to drop to the general public today until it's perfect, because that's their liability.
yeah. That
And
makes sense.
I think there's also the really hard to account for of just life's entropy. And I think that so many of like the wham bam Tesla cam videos, right, are the reaction of multiple things happening quickly. A tire flying off or something, right, that is unpredictable and fast and way beyond any human ability to react to it. And then there's just then what does the machine then do with that quick input of information? And I love the We Robot thing. I love sci-fi. I love Blade Runner. I love iRobot. Like I can nerd and geek out on all of those. Quick trivia: in the '90s, I used to work in the Bradbury Building in LA, where part of Blade Runner was filmed. I've always been a geek about that that whole look and feel, that almost steampunk or future, that merging of them. But in iRobot, one of the critical scenes that was so important was when the robot makes a decision to save the child or Will Smith, and it makes an analytical decision. Well, Will Smith's character had a better chance of survival than the child, and Will Smith says, a human would have known. A human would have known you go after the child first. And you see this with pilots, for example, who might have airplane trouble, and they make a conscious decision of where they put the plane down to avoid buildings or make sure they're not around a school, or right. That type of AI has to somehow exist within the vehicle too, that if I've got to make a split-second decision and I'm going to throw myself into a truck, into a wall barrier, or into a school bus, it's got to know that that school bus is different. Or like, I don't think it can detect that there's small humans in the car to the right, so I'm going to go to the left. But those type of little things long term are going to have to be worked out and figured out, because I do think that when you remove the humanity from the experience, it removes the human ability to forgive the error. And so I think human to human, that's an easier thing. And I do think, to Josh's point, that is the biggest obstacle in this regulation. Is you see it with battery fires already, right? The exaggeration of the risk of it, even though it's far less than anything else. Now I'm at, everybody who had a heart attack event, or everybody who had a seizure who crashes their Tesla, it's person driving a Tesla crashed and died. And then you read the article and it had nothing to do with the fact that it was a Tesla. Now imagine that out to the Robotaxi. And when there's an accident, it's going to be, the focus will be on that technology, regardless of fault. So there's a lot there. I think, did they talk about any of that? I think it's probably too early for it, I would guess.
Yeah, no, they didn't get into any kind of the ethical end of things, or it was just more a focus on the technologies, the path forward, the capabilities, and the advent of these technologies, what it will provide humanity with, what we can do with it, where we could go with it.
What was your thought on
Yeah,
the inductive charging? Because I thought, if like, it makes a lot of sense in the function of a robotaxi that goes a couple hundred miles a day with a lot of stop and go city driving. You get a lot of range out of that, a lot of efficiency with that form factor. We talked a few weeks ago with Tim from Along McArthur Ford about, we'd love to see a Maverick electrified, but practically speaking, you can't, because it's such a small form factor. You can't get enough battery range out of that small
right.
footprint for a truck. But this is, you could get a 50 kilowatt hour battery and get your 200 miles on that small form factor, and then go an inductive charge. But that makes sense. But if you're using it as a person that wants to go 1,000, not 1,000 miles, but however long you went across Canada, right? You can't
Yeah.
do that unless all the superchargers would have to then have inductive charging installed. Or do you get the sense that that vision is much further away? If this was a Model 2,
Um,
for example, is that going to be inductive? Did they talk about that induction and how that's going to, because that's got to exist as well. You can't just put the car out. There's literally, if I understand right, no charge port. Is that what you saw?
That's what I saw as well. Yes. Yeah. Again, Tesla could change that on a whim. That's nothing for them to do, but just add a little door somewhere hidden behind beside a tail light or something like that. They could certainly do that. But the inductive charging, I thought, it's a great solution to the issue of you're not going to need a bot or something to go and plug the car in every time you need to charge
Yeah.
this thing. They need it to be fully autonomous as far as its refueling is concerned, and having that inductive charging mat is the way forward. I did speak to Sandy Monroe about that, and that's one of his favorite things of the entire evening was the announcement of inductive charging. I mean, he loves that idea. He loves the idea of if there's the option to even add that to an existing Tesla, or buy a Tesla down the road where it has the capability built in. You also have the charge port, but being able to install that mat in your garage, just saving yourself another step, that sort of thing. Again, it's going to depend on the climate. I mean, I came from Canada where you get a lot of slush and ice buildup under the vehicle, so I don't know how well that would work. Perhaps you need to be in a heated garage, but then kind of adding an extra step. But I guess it depends. Mind you, the battery would create some heat to melt that off. I don't know. There's lots of questions, as many questions as you can provide answers on that. But I think it's a great solution for the urban refueling of an autonomous robotaxi, and it may be limited to just those use cases. That they may not roll it out to the entire fleet, but we'll see what they decide to do.
I think it'll be a good hybrid where there's a both selection where if it's in autopilot mode and like doing its own thing, then yes. But like if you're in the vehicle and you're the owner and you want a quicker charge, because I'm sure with the um, inductive it probably won't be as quick.
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
good
that
point.
with that regard, there should be some sort of override where there's just a little port that you could plug it in at a supercharger and it'll pull up and just tell you to go plug it in or whatever. But
I know Jesse talked about last week there was something being worked on where they did have some pretty quick charging for the inductive charging. And I know that Tesla a year and a half ago or so bought a German company that this is what they do. So I'm sure that's not coincidence. Jesse, do you remember the charge speed that they were looking at that you saw?
270 was the record that Oak Ridge National Labs published that they had with inductive charging for their system.
pretty good.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I wonder what kind of heat generation is with that too.
Yeah,
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
Has
And you
anybody
can
talked-
easily microwave your food underneath there while you're doing it. Who knows? You might get a dual use out of it.
Yeah.
So
Throw a cheese pizza under there.
a little cheese pizza,
light it
we're
up.
fine. We'll have one of the Optimus make it for us in the seat beside us, and then we'll tie it all together that way.
Yeah, I think my mind is already 2 and 3 steps ahead, wondering about things that they're not ready to reveal or are still working the details out on. It's still a big. I think Elon put out an aspiration for a couple of years from now, but I can't help but feel like this is more like 5 years away. But we'll see. We'll see who. I love the aspiration regardless of the timeline. I think nobody else. This doesn't exist without him presenting it. So many things don't exist without him presenting it.
There'll be a lot of changes. I mean, when Elon rolled the Cybertruck idea out, I mean, it was all the talk and all the hype when he did it, and he did produce the product. It was much different, I think, than what everybody originally anticipated. Costs went up, which, I mean, we've already said we anticipated probably going higher than his goals for the start of it. But, at the end of the day, he produced what he said he was going to produce, and it took him a little bit longer, and it was a 5-year stretch instead of 2 or whatever. But at the end of the day, we do have Cybertrucks on the road driving today.
Top-selling truck, man. Top-selling EV truck.
Guys like them. Yeah. Like it's not a bad product. That's the thing.
So that's where the next iteration of this, will Robotaxis be on the road next year? Probably not. But in 5 years, will there be a product on the road? Yes. Will it be everything that was presented? Maybe not in the iteration 1, but I do think that Elon, with what he has done and his track record, I think that there will be very viable options and solutions coming on the roadway, like you said, probably within the 5-year mark. So,
but you kind of make an interesting point there. Like, I wonder if maybe that's part of the reason why they stayed a little bit more vague on the details, because if you remember back to 2019 when they announced Cybertruck, they hammered out it was going to do this, this, and this, and this, right? And here's the price, and here's this and that. Yeah, right. You have all these like fine, like pinned down details with no room to kind of flex over time as iterations change. And so I'm wondering if maybe that was their approach with the Cybercab as well, to say, hey, let's just leave a little bit more to the imagination. We'll keep our cards a little bit closer to the chest, and we'll announce it as we get a little bit closer. And the reality is, like, pricing and specs, they can throw that as a post on X. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's not, you don't need to host a huge international event to tell people where to buy it and how much it is.
He still will, but yeah.
maybe we'll get an invite to that one, Josh, if you can help us get on that. We don't need to be in the VIP.
Josh to put in a good word for us. That way, when the next event comes,
go
we can get the VIP ticket with him, and it'll be great. Yeah.
Listen, I would go just for the food. Never mind the robots, man. The food was amazing.
I want a robot to serve me a drink. That would be the target.
It did, right? It did. It was serving drinks.
Yeah. I'm glad they did have the talking aspect to it. Like that was a great addition, even though it was a handler on the other side. I think it really added to the experience. I'll give you a great example. It was my son's birthday, so I was missing his birthday to be at the event, and having Optimus. I got him on camera and he wished my son a happy birthday. I mean, my son has shared that with all his friends at the high school. He's just talking to town, just made his day.
That is cool.
You redeemed yourself on that one. Yeah,
exactly. Right. And I was able to do that, with some cool technology. So, I mean, in that respect, it was cool, so people can talk negatively or throw shade at it. But I think overall, I think Tesla accomplished what they wanted to do.
So as we start to wrap it up here, talk a little bit about like what you're doing today and where people can find you, because I have seen you, I've been following you for a while, and I saw you were up at the Canadian, I can't remember what that thing is called, like All Things Electric. What is that event called?
Everything Electric in
Everything Electric.
Vancouver, British Columbia.
So
Yeah.
you are well traveled, because you were up there and then you were out in Florida for the Cyberfest, right?
Yep.
And then
Yep.
I'm not crazy. I think I saw you in Texas for the launch
Yes.
of the Starship.
Starship and the Mechazilla catch. What a
Yes.
spectacular
Oh,
sight
wow.
that was.
Yeah,
Which
that
we didn't
was
even
awesome.
have time to touch
I
on
was
that.
I was there for that.
And then you're in Hollywood.
Unbelievable.
Is this what you're
Yeah.
doing? Like, because we do this just as a hobby for fun, man, right? And
Yeah.
I have this background so that you can't see the mess that's in my living room behind me. But it's like, are you doing this for a living? Or is this how you're able to travel like this? And
Yeah,
where can people find you and support you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So right now, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, just firing back up on TikTok. Not too much yet, but it's coming. And I'm on Snapchat and of course X. But everywhere you can find me is Josh West 24/7, because that's who I am 24/7. I have been traveling around. I'm actually headed to an event this weekend in Mississippi with one of the biggest Tesla, actually the biggest Tesla owners club in the state. So I'll be meeting some great people there and talking Tesla and electric vehicles. And yeah, there's been tons of great events. The X Takeover, that was another great event.
Yeah.
And I will be back on the West Coast, Chris. Don't worry, we're gonna get together and do some videos for sure.
It would be definitely cool to meet in person. Yeah.
100%, man. And I appreciate you guys really. Truly appreciate being on the pod here, man. This is a true privilege and just wonderful. But yeah, I'm all in on bringing the content. One of the big things that really, it was actually Corey again, going back to those few years ago when he was prodding me along to get in front of the camera, was that he said, there's nobody in the space of electric vehicles as far as producing content that comes from the old legacy automotive. And being that I have, almost 2 decades experience with, gas, diesel, like I can speak intelligently to these concepts and these, as far as where things were with combustion, with, diesel, whether we're talking glow plugs, turbochargers, all that sort of thing. But I can also speak, to what I've learned in the electric vehicle space. So, we can talk kilowatts and range and all that good stuff. So, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I think I'm just getting started because it's pretty exciting. I got some great people that have been so supportive, and yeah, shout out to guys like you and Sandy Monroe and Tesla Silicon Valley. Those guys have been phenomenal. It's just on his podcast as well, and yeah, and even the SpaceX community, man. After the launch, I was invited to go for breakfast with a bunch of the SpaceX engineers, and
Awesome.
some of them already were following the channel, and I'm just like mind blown. So it's been quite a wild ride and a lot of fun. So there's lots more to come.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's been enjoyable. I mean, Jesse and I are in the renewable energy. We do chargers and just kind of the doors that are open to meet and talk to cool people. The podcast is just a cool platform to connect and network with awesome different people that are just doing a bunch of really cool stuff in the space like you and from all over the nation and all over the world, just making impacts here and there. And it's just kind of cool to tag along with all of the momentum. So
Gives me an
Totally.
excuse to learn about all these people without seeming like a stalker. Because if I didn't have the podcast to learn about these folks, then it would be
you would
super
just
creepy.
be a stalker. Yeah.
It would just be a stalker. Like, hey, Josh, I'd love to learn more. Tell me everything about you, Joe. Why would you know? Now I get a platform to
Tell me all about you. Yeah.
right.
But yeah. Well, awesome,
Well,
guys.
awesome.
We'll make sure we get your links and everything down in the description so people can find you and like and subscribe and follow for all the cool adventures you're on, because it's really cool for me to follow you. You're one of the folks that I definitely have where I ring the bell and it lets me know whenever you're on to your next thing. So love what you're doing, man. It's really special. It's really cool. Inspirational,
Thanks, Chris.
truly.
I appreciate it, man. I really enjoy your content as well, man. We should try and get something together with Farley. See if he'll sit down with us. That would be cool.
Yeah, yeah. That'd be
We
great.
will all be there for that one.
Yeah, for
Awesome.
sure.
Well, it's been another great episode of Turn Down for What. Tune in next week for more EV news and updates.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.